Here we go. Good evening. This is Patrick Danko from Next Up in the Spotlight. We have a special guest joining us today, Liz Higgins. Liz, how are you this evening?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you here. There's a lot of things that we're going to talk about, millennial relationship business. We're going to tie everything together. But before we do that, and before I ask you about how you're doing, I wanted to introduce you. Liz is a licensed therapist and a clinically trained coach whose mission is to help millennial entrepreneurs reignite their ambition, elevate their relationships, and embody the CEO they're meant to be so they can win at the long game in their personal life and in their business and their professional life. So Liz, welcome. I'm glad that you're here today. How are you?
I'm doing well. I feel like I should have like a drink or something with it. It's like night, it's dark. I see both of our windows. It's dark outside. So
It is dark. It is dark. I'm in Toronto. You are in Texas.
Dallas. Yep.
Dallas. Yes, I love this. I love my people from the South. So Liz, before we jump into it, I wanted to find out just kind of how are you? How are you doing? Sometimes we get into the meat and potatoes, so I just want to find how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm coming up on a really exciting week for my therapist and coach soul. Got a big training coming up this week, so I'm excited to kind of deepen in the work that I feel so passionate about doing with clients. So I am pumped
Okay.
about that. And at the same time, it's like, woo, life is flying by. I have two little kids and just trying to keep up.
I love that. You know what? I feel like that's the common denominator for everyone trying to keep up. And I want everyone to find out a little bit more about you. The idea for those that don't know, but the idea with the premise of the podcast is to really feature entrepreneurs, directors, creatives, people, speak to your journey, who you are, what you do, and then the demographic that you serve. You talked about what you're passionate about, and so many of us have this passion. So how are we using that, leveraging that to help others, to reach out to others, to provide a solution to the pain point. So we have you here today. I'm really, really excited for this topic because I fall into this demographic. So this is going to be fantastic. But I wanted you to maybe take a second to introduce yourself and what you do. So why don't we start there?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, and I could probably talk for way too long about the origin story of my business, but I guess it does go back to like circa 2014 or so when I came out of grad school licensed and was very excited to get into the field of couples therapy, relational counseling type stuff, but felt a lot of imposter syndrome in my field about being a young, new therapist and how am I going to help people in their marriages when I'm like, in this phase of life and doing what I'm doing. And I'm, under the age of 30 at the time. And it just felt scary. So interestingly enough, as most entrepreneurs do, I leaned into that very piece of my struggle at the time and said, you know what, I'm going to like harness this piece of speaking to the relational issues going on for people in the world right now that are around my same age. And, I'm walking through it. Why not use that to help connect to people out there?
Right.
And that is 100% what worked back then to help me cultivate the brand I have now with my clinical practice in Texas, Millennial Life Counseling. And
Okay.
that's exactly what we do is we help this generation create epic marriages, relationships, and lives. And through this experience and what I've built here, I've been able to do a lot of really exciting work with entrepreneurs in Texas and in Dallas. I think Dallas is a big hub for the young professionals. And so it's been a lot of fun to begin deepening in that work over the past few years and ultimately deciding that this is something I want to really get bigger. There's such a world out there to reach. And us millennials, we've got a lot of significant things going on. And I know we're going to talk about some of that stuff tonight, but it's just been such a joy to be like in this field doing work with people that I do feel in some ways like leveled with. It's like we get each other. We have a shared felt sense of what the world is today and the unique obstacles and issues that we are experiencing, especially relationally, in
Okay.
personal and in business. And so I feel like that's the mark I'll be able to leave on this earth is just being a part of helping people learn to really really level up and deeply understand like how they're
Mhm.
showing up in all areas of their life, especially relationally.
Absolutely. No, I love that you said that. This is going to be exciting. And, we're going to take it from, I have so many questions, and the thing with millennials too, I mean, I feel like every generation looks like at other generations differently. So I want to get into the
Totally.
millennial because I think it's important. And I want to look at it from a relationship, almost like a dating relationship standpoint, some of the
Yeah.
challenges, and then we'll kind of transition and go into like how it manifests itself in the workplace, kind of like what you said, you finish, you're a grad student, you have the credentials, you're shifting into the work force, work environment. And when you step into this ecosystem, you have people who have been doing it longer, who are more tenured than you. And it's like, do you feel like you can do the job, right? You're new to the environment, or you have a client
Right.
base that's older than you, right? So we'll get into all of it because I feel like so many people can relate. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is maybe millennials when it comes to dating. The millennial dating landscape is what I wanted to get into. And the reason being is I feel like, let me know what you think, but I feel like there's this feeling of almost a FOMO, like no one really wants to commit because we're in this information technology age where there's a plethora of, dating apps that offer, all these dating opportunities. And just that alone is, when you're on that, it creates this space or thinking like maybe I shouldn't commit here because maybe there's something better waiting for me, right? And I could be wrong, right? But this is what I'm getting from some of my peers, and I wanted you to kind of speak to that. Like, is that true? And if so, like, how does one really begin to navigate that? Because then you're constantly looking as opposed to really being in tune with what you want and finding that right person. You're always thinking that there's something better out there.
Well, yes to all of that, and your friends are all on point. It's like a yes, and there's more, And I mean, I have yet to discover an app or any kind of platform where you can date and meet people that surpasses that step of the time and the process involved with actually getting to know somebody and actually co-creating like a relational experience where for those that are actually out there trying to find something meaningful, find something secure and long term in nature or committed in nature, whatever that may mean to them, there's nothing out there that's going to, yeah, surpass that process, just the real ingredients that it takes to create something. And so, yeah, we got to pull back and look at the broader context of how we have all grown up, which is this mindset that we are really important, and not really in this inflated narcissistic way, but just knowing that like, hey, I have inherent value, I have inherent worth, and I should wait out for somebody that's going to respect me and acknowledge me and see my worth too. And so knowing that we are important,
Right.
um knowing that, um well, not the knowing that, but just looking at the unique aspect of technology and, like you're saying, the online dating platforms. I mean, this was our generation. We were born with this stuff not really in existence yet, and it all blew up throughout our lifetime. And so, we can say, like, we're going through this very unique experience of figuring out, like, how this all works and how to really make meaningful relationships that last. And so, yeah, I mean, pair the mindset things of like, hey, I should reach for the stars, I should, pursue what I want in life, hold out for the best, I'm deserving of the best, or something good. And then just the fast pace of technology and the way the world is and how fiercely independent our generation has become, or this generation has become, can make
Right.
it really hard to be actually relational and actually um slow in the process. And people listening are probably like, yeah, F that. Who wants to like be slow about it? You kind of want to know right now, is this or isn't this? And let's
Right.
figure it out. But the
Right.
problem is, there's so many, I'll use the clinical term, avoidant people out there in the dating pool, which are kind of the people that are just out there, lather, rinse, repeat, just sort of seeking the high of the honeymoon phase of relationships, not really looking for deep commitment. And it makes it really hard. I've talked to plenty of people, plenty of clients and friends that are good people holding out to find something real, and you got to wade through a lot out
Right.
there
Right.
because what we initially get on the other side of an app in some ways is like, a pseudo self. We don't really know the person. And so there's just quite the journey. And like I said, we can't really surpass like the time and process that it takes to really cultivate that relationship.
Okay. So then how does, I mean, it sounds terrifying when I look at it. But so how does, no, it does, right? The whole experience it can be challenging. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I
right. So
think
I'm
it
always
it also pushes this notion, especially online dating and, Match and all these, again, platforms where you go specifically to do this, to find somebody that wants to relate to you in this kind of way.
right.
It makes it really, really scary sometimes because we're fixating now on finding the right person. And I have clients all the time coming in talking to me about like, I'm finding somebody that's like this, and I want somebody that checks off these boxes. And we're fixating on these very specific things that we think we want in another person. And we're starting to ask the wrong questions. How do I find
And
the right person? It's
what do you
actually
mean?
more about like, how do I be the right kind of person? How do I be the kind of person that I would want to be in a relationship with? And letting those qualities come out in how I am dating and
Right.
the standards that I have for myself and what I will and won't allow to happen while I'm pursuing these kinds of relationships.
Yes. Absolutely. No, thank you, Liz. I appreciate that. And the other thing that I find that comes up often as well, and again, I'm speaking from what I've heard from some of my peers, is relationships, millennial relationships, when it comes to, I think, finances in their relationships. Like I'm hearing it, and I think things have changed so much too, because I know even like when my parents grew up, like maybe one person is the breadwinner working, the other person
Yeah.
is a stay at home. So that's kind of the roles are set. The finances kind of are divvied accordingly, I guess, to what you're doing. Whether it's right or wrong, that's kind of, I feel like that was most of my generation. That's what people saw. Now
Yeah.
it's such a shift. People, both men and women or both partners are working. And I think when it comes to finances, finance can create a power and control imbalance sometimes, right? And no one wants to feel um, on the opposite end of that power and control. And I'm wondering, do you have any advice for those that are trying to create harmony in their relationships, but the finances are creating this wedge or divide?
Yeah, yeah, and there are studies that have shown that for some couples, talking about finances is more uncomfortable than talking about, like, sex, and I've always found that kind of interesting. But, it becomes this area, just like you said, of power, control. We're getting into much deeper stuff pretty quickly when I sit and talk with couples because 'cause I've done a lot of couples therapy too in my experience, and finances is certainly something that comes up for people, and you're right, it has changed so much, especially with more dual income, families, couples, whatever, and again, this fiercely independent mindset. It's no longer really what's mine is ours. It's like, hey, can we kind of have this proactive conversation about how we're going to respect what each of us is doing and what each of us is bringing in financially, and
Right.
really interesting stuff on how finances integrates with trust and
Mm,
transparency and respecting your own agency to pursue goals and do whatever you want with it, And so what I love about the progressiveness of our generation is that I think we are really embracing this notion that it's not one size fits all and being okay with that, that it's okay that over there that's what they do and that's okay that here we've decided to do something different. What
right.
matters the most and what research indicates about couple relationships is that the two of you are good, that you're in an understanding and a transparency with each other about the arrangement you have and why that is meaningful for you. And,
Mm,
so getting to that point does require vulnerable conversations and being willing to share like the meaning that money has for you. I've done a
I,
lot of that work with couples starting out actually, like before marriage sometimes. It's like lots of really great exercises to get into that help you break down like the meaning that money actually has for you on very emotional levels. And so Is it about security? Is it about enjoyment? Is it about control and protecting self? And all
Mhm.
of these things always relate back to our own, what I call origin stories,
Yeah.
and the unique needs and values and sometimes wounds that we carry into our relationships. And so the most
Getting
important piece is that you're showing up to talk about it with each other. If you are with somebody avoiding it or you're avoiding it, it's a red flag.
got you. And I love that you said that too. And something came to mind right away. And I don't know if it's couples avoiding it, but what I have noticed, especially working with high functioning, well to do people,
Mhm.
sometimes both partners are doing well. Sometimes one partner is doing significantly well and the other isn't doing as well. And I find the challenge more when the female partner is doing significantly well and her male counterpart isn't.
Mhm.
I see that sometimes it creates this struggle. I've noticed it with when that's the dynamic versus he's doing well and she isn't. And I was curious if you had any advice to how that partners can communicate in a way that they can address, look at it, like you're saying, because you said that challenges, they won't even speak to it. So how do they speak to it? How do they address it in a healthy way when there's this undertone, because it's becoming the elephant in the room?
Yeah, for sure. And I was hearing you say all that, and I'm like, wow, it really is true. Like what you're speaking to, especially with those like heteronormative relationships where the
Right.
woman is making the money, she's the breadwinner now, whatever that means, and the husband or partner, male counterpart is not, or maybe even actively intentionally not, because like what's happening a lot now is like the woman is doing that and the man is staying home with the kids or something like that. But it's like actively actively going against the norm from just the generation right before ours. I mean, a little more with Gen X, but certainly the boomers, this was not the norm for their generation.
Right.
And so in such a short period of time, the flips are switched or whatever. And we're having to now navigate like what does this mean for us on a gender script level, on a partnership level? Like, how do we talk about these things that could really be carrying a whole legacy of should be and, you know, normally this is what the man would do and the woman would do XYZ. Again, you're actively going a different direction than some of those notions. And so the biggest thing I can say to people, and I love this saying in relationship world, is like dare to rock the boat and be able to take each other on. And I mean that in a very healthy, positive way. Take on the hard conversations. If you're
Mhm.
feeling the strangeness of this new terrain where, you're in this role that like historically this is not what women did or not what men did, like you're trailblazing in some ways. And again, the cool thing in our world today is that we're accepting these notions. We're accepting that, like, hey, like we can do things differently and this could be really great for you too. And it is. But what it takes to get there is being willing to navigating the hard conversations and again, just like take it on. So yeah, I don't know what else I can say on that. But I
love
mean,
that. No, I love that. Take it on. Be a trailblazer, man. Are you hearing that? Yeah, I mean, definitely. I love what you had to say there. And, I think this is a good transition because I wanted to start to talk about how things manifest in the business world, in the work world. I wanted to know a little bit about imposter syndrome. You spoke about, transitioning from grad school into the business environment, but
yeah.
what would you say for your demographic that you serve? What are you noticing are the common challenges they face when they're stepping into the business world? Like what are they noticing? How do they verbalize it to you?
Well, I mean, I promise I'm not just saying this because I'm like in the realm of relationship all the time, but I really feel like a huge piece that I see with entrepreneurs I work with is that they're not leveraging and trusting in the relationships around them to help build them up. And I think this is very much the persona of really, really driven, successful professionals and entrepreneurs. It's that like you kind of embody this notion of like, I have to take it all on. Like, I will get it done. I'm the doer. I'm the one that people historically look to as a leader to trust in. And that is fantastic. I mean, that is like the essence of, I think, a very successful entrepreneur. But there's this
Mm.
whole other realm that is just as important that's like, hey, are your relationships nurturing you? Are they helping you thrive and level up and succeed? Or are you kind of over here alone carrying the weight of everything you're doing? And I think that can happen both inside your business with difficulty releasing control and outsourcing things and giving stuff to others so that they can go and level up with you and really take ownership of roles that you've built out. And then also personally, I've talked to entrepreneurs that barely even share the successes of what they've created with their family. And upon deeper exploration, it's really this subconscious thing where they're kind of protecting others from, trying not to burden others in a strange way. And so,
What do you mean by that? Why wouldn't they want to share? And why would they feel like they're burdening others by doing that?
yeah, drawing attention to self,
Mm.
maybe that narcissistic, that fear of becoming narcissistic or something. I don't know. I say I don't know because I really feel like it can vary from one person to the next,
I
but
got
I think it's getting into the inner workings of some of those relationships. But I've seen some that kind of take that stance of, because of my success and because of what I do and where I am, I genuinely feel better than those around me.
mm.
And then the flip of that is kind of, those around me don't do what I do. They're not going to understand it. I feel bad
Yes.
sharing because I'm bragging. They're going to see me as egocentric, like
Yes.
whatever. So we can
Yes.
definitely respond in different ways. But I bring it up as an example because what we do does shift into how we show up relationally with people in our personal life.
So in that case, then if someone comes to you and this is some of the challenges that they're facing, what would you suggest in terms of how you tackle it? What do they need to do to start to remedy those challenges?
Yeah, well, I know this one probably won't sound super like, oh, I can go out. You can go out and start cultivating this right now, but it's a pretty large concept. But something I work with clients to grow in is their relational mindfulness practice. And I
Okay.
mean, it is essentially, it's like you go to the gym, you work out, you get sore, yeah, but you have to keep it up. You have to practice. And we don't think about relationships that way, but they totally are. We have to consciously write the narrative of like who we want to be as people, right? And I think we do that a lot in our business, but we don't necessarily think about it relationally. Like I was saying earlier with dating, it's not finding the right partner, it's being the right partner. So, very much this, who do I want to be and how do I want to show up in my interactions? How do I want people to remember me as? And,
Mm.
just like what are the characteristics of this person that I am in this journey? Because a lot of times we are acting and reacting out of very subconscious drives. It's just the truth. And there's so much data to back that up around trauma and just like relationship dynamics and things like that.
Okay.
So it's being conscious about how we want to show up and then practicing that mindfully, sometimes moment to moment. Sometimes it's like, okay, right now, this is what I want to do, but I know who I'm trying to be here and what I would like to portray. And so I'm going to work on this over here. So relational mindfulness is a huge piece of it.
Relational
Um,
mindfulness. And if people aren't working on, like, how detrimental, how are things going to manifest if they, I'm just kind of going through the motions. I'm not sharing. I'm holding this in. I'm burning out. But they're not seeking the treatment. Like, how is that going to manifest? Like, what would they start to see? Right. Because I know I can think of some people who are in this, but they don't see
yeah,
what's happening as a result of that. They see it as part of working hard, part of trying to prove yourself,
right.
part of being a high functioning, successful person. This is just kind of what comes with it.
I will tell you 100%. It's not just what will they start to see? It's like literally how will they start to feel? And I
Okay.
think a lot of it comes back to trusting your own body to tell you when you're on track and off track. Relationally, our body holds physical symptoms of things. Anxiety is also a wonderful symptom to help indicate that, something is happening for us that we need to investigate. And this could be a little like, I don't know, different thoughts with different things. I think medications are 100% a very important tool for us to help navigate some of those more
Mm,
challenging mental health issues and stuff. But also, it's like before we pop the pills, investigate what is happening. Let's not just try
yeah,
and numb it out. Let's go
right.
inward and really get to know what our body is telling us about this relationship or this situation. So really it's like, how a lot of coaching journeys kind of are. It's peeling back layers and just
Mm,
getting back to your own essence because especially when we're hustling and grinding and going, we can very quickly compromise ourselves for the sake of everything outside of us to keep working and stay put together. And so the end result when you're not really being in alignment with yourself and aware of yourself is that you're going to crumble.
yes, you're going to eventually crash and burn. I love that, Liz. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, as we're wrapping up here, Dick, I wanted to know how people can reach you. How can they get in touch with you, right? Like if I find or someone here is like, you know what, this resonates with me. What's the best way to get in touch with you, follow up with you, connect with you?
Well, my website would be great. It's lizhiggins.co. And then I'm on Instagram too at Liz T. Higgins. And yeah, Facebook as well. So I'm kind of out there. Pretty easy to find. Pretty easy to find.
Leveraging your social media platform. I love that. Any final words to take it away with? You've given so much information. I think the information has been extremely valuable. But any final words before we wrap up this evening?
Yeah, just that, it's the same as physical health and, mental wellness is our relational health really, really leads us back to some important opportunities to heal and grow. And I would just tell anybody out there that's interested in what I'm sharing, there's so much out there to back up this notion that going inward and developing a healthier relationship to yourself and then outwardly to others in your life, including teams, including colleagues, including your support system, and then absolutely partners can really, really help you thrive. And it's skills, I feel like I tell my husband all the time, actually, becoming a therapist saved our marriage before we even had it. Because I know me and I know, how I can be based on my history. And I don't know that I would have lasted this long. I'm
Right.
I'm beyond a decade in with this guy, so we're doing something right.
There you go. Fantastic. Happy to hear that. Liz Higgins, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for carving out time. This was wonderful. I appreciate it. For those that tuned in, thank you as well. Have a good evening, Liz.
Bye.
Thank you.